The African American Legend series highlights the accomplishments of blacks in areas as varied as politics, sports, aviation, business, literature, and drama. We'll explore how African Americans have succeeded in areas where they've been previously excluded because of segregation, racism, and lack of opportunity. I'm your host, Dr. Roscoe C. Brown, Jr., and with us today is Woodie King Jr., director, founder of the New Federal Theater. Hi, Woodie. Good to have you with us
Thank you
today.
for having me. I'm so glad to visit you, man. Every time I visit you, I get a lesson. I get a history.
You like the history of black theater in New York and the nation. And the New Federal Theater has been around for a lot of years.
38 years. We're celebrating our 30th anniversary.
That's 2 lifetimes for most theater companies. So what are you thinking about in terms of the future? Where do you go? How do you assess what you've done? Woodie King Jr. and the New Federal Theater is an institution in the theater community, not just the black theater community, but the theater community. Where do you go from here?
Okay, well, what I'm doing is I'm always dealing with history, black history, how it relates to literature, how it relates to black people and white people as well. And so in 2008, during Black History Month, I'm going to do something called the Black History Month Play Festival. And that play festival will take place at the Schomburg Center in Harlem with a piece on Dr. Rosa Parks, starring Ella Joyce, and then we're going to do a piece on Zora Neale Hurston, who wrote The Eyes Were Watching God, and Lorraine Hansberry, who pioneered with A Raisin in the Sun, and we came from the famous Hansberry family in Chicago, and I'm going to do a piece on Paul Robeson. And all that's going to take place in February, March of 2008. And at New Federal Theater, I'm also interested in exploring how racism affected black baseball, especially through Satchel Paige, and how he broke into the majors, and how Josh Gibson was denied that access. So those are the pieces I'm working on immediately. And immediately for me means 3 or 4 months down the road, you know?
Well, the history of black folks yield a lot of material for drama.
Yes.
Black life, in a sense, is drama.
Yes.
Overcoming the challenges you've made. And during the 70s and the 80s, black theater was sort of rising. We had the New Federal Theater, we had the Negro Ensemble Company, we had a lot of local black theaters. And some of those plays actually made it to Broadway.
Oh, yeah.
Now,
yeah.
one of the things that we were concerned about at that time is how we could project the issues that affect black folks in a way that they would be seen as issues that affect everyone in the human race.
That common denominator which makes us all basically the same. The human emotions that we all ride on, the family structure, and our history and our culture. So out of the 60s, of course, came A Raisin in the Sun, which sort of like pioneered. Then you jumped.
Now, why was Raisin in the Sun a pioneer play?
Because first of all, it dealt with human emotions. It dealt for a longing, what we all long for, better housing, better education, a better life. And that is what black theater, all theater should do, should go inside of us and find out what we really want as a human person. And that want is basic. It's a common denominator, runs through everybody. And I think once you or I or anyone who work in the theater, work in literature, find that common denominator, we're better artists.
Well, some theater work is exhortational. We can do better. We can challenge the system. And some of those plays were seen by white audiences being too angry. And I often said, well, if you weren't angry as a black American, you weren't human.
Right.
So how did you portray that in some of the work that you were developing?
Well, you know, I think what's so interesting, if we trace our history, we all have something called the African Continuum. This continuum, almost every black people in the Caribbean, in America, we have this common thing of the slave ship. We were all brought this way on the slave ship. And whether we acknowledge it or not, there is something within us. It's sort of like organic, intrinsic into who we are, and we relate to that. And so, however long we've been in America, we are going to feel oppressed by that. That was an unbelievable, horrendous situation. And we look back on it with such disdain, such anger, till we have to express it in some sort of way. Some people find ways to express it through their art. Some people through their striving for a better life so that can never happen again. So the way I think I was able to relate to it, early on in my career, around when I was 18 or 19, I met Langston Hughes and watched his humanity. Then he introduced me to that world of literature, from Ossie Davis to Ralph Ellison to James Baldwin. So I was there watching these unbelievably creative people do things, and I read almost everything I could get my hands on. And before I left Detroit in 1964 and arrived in New York, I understand, I arrived here prior to Malcolm's assassination. I arrived here during an unbelievable, fervent time, you know, where you could see all these plays and all this art, whether it was Dutchman downtown or the Black Arts Theater in Harlem, or the beginning of the Alvin Ailey Dance Company, the beginning of Lester Horton, and all these other wonderful artists and creators. And so my being, in a sense, friends with Langston Hughes did not hurt. Mm-hmm. It did not hurt at all. I could go and see plays when, because they wanted him to come, and he said, "What are you doing this evening?" You know, or I could go to poetry readings and hear just unbelievable artists work. You know, so it was great for me.
Let's talk about now, 2007, 2008. Mm-hmm. The New Federal Theater has been sort of a place where young writers could come together.
Yes.
It's like an embryo.
Yes.
It brings them out. What are the young black writers thinking about, writing about now, as different from the people like Charles Fuller and August Wilson and Langston Hughes were writing about? What are they struggling for in their art?
Well, what I keep finding is, you gotta understand, I've been in it a long time. Our theater been around a long time. I am not necessarily trying to do anything other than speak out to an audience that's between 25 and 75. I'm not trying to get the 16-year-old, 17-year-old. There are people that are more qualified for that. Mm-hmm. But what I find in young playwrights, whether it's the 25-year-old Ntozake Shange, who wrote for Color Girls, which we produced, or a very young, innovative writer like Nina Mercer, whose play Gutter Beautiful just closed, who's 28 or 29 years old. These writers are talking about human feelings, relationship with mother, relationship with each other, other 25-year-olds. They're talking about these relationships and how that affect, how their lives are affected by whether it is hip-hop or just rap or the new culture, how this culture impacts on their lives. And that's what their work is about. The writer who wrote the piece on Josh Gibson, he's about 35 years old. He's, you know, but it comes from research. It comes from a history. The other thing that we find when these plays come to me, whether they're from Chicago, Cleveland, Ohio, or wherever, they come from writers who have read the young writer's work and say, wow, you better send this to Woody in New York. They don't just find me through a telephone book. They find me through recommendations of people whose work I've done, whose work that might champion this, the person who might champion this young writer's work. So they come with, when Ed Bullen sends me a script, I'm going to read it right away. Or Shorneal Perry sends me a script, I'm going to read it right away. Or Miri Baraka, or even Ntozake, you know, when she sends me a script, she said, this is a young writer you should read. Then you know it's something in that, you know?
Well, in the evolution of black theater, of course, we know black theater has always been around from after the Civil War.
Right, right.
And we had great writers and actors who acted about black causes. It was only recent, relatively recent, that we could really deal with the intrapsychics among black people. The fight or the struggle between men and women, the struggle between different genders, the struggle to accept some of the problems we have.
Right.
This has really changed, in a sense, the way in which the plays are written. You don't quite get the lyricism. One thing that August Wilson was known for, that even though he dealt with some of the issues, he had a certain amount of lyricism in his plays. Part of it is that he restricted himself to that area of Pittsburgh, the Hill District, and everything related to that. Somehow or another, I feel that life experience has a lot to do with what you write about and the way you feel about it.
Right.
And the life experience of you and myself and our generation is totally different from the life experience of these younger people.
Right, right.
Now the question is, how is that talent developed? Is it getting better? Is it exploring the lyricism and the mysticism of literature and drama, which is what always makes great theater?
Well, you know, I think, first of all, the black theater really started in Greenwich Village around 1821, 1822 with the African Grove Theater. I just wanted to make sure we understood that. And hoodlums, white hoodlums, really drove them out. They would do Shakespearean works, Richard III, Othello, etc., on Grove Street, down in Greenwich Village, New York. And that's why they call it the African Grove Theater. But jump into what we write about, what we deal with, where are they getting their training. In the historic black colleges, whether it's Howard University, Spelman, Coppin State, there are these black professors, and they are usually one person trying to do everything. They would get 1 or 2 great students a year. Invariably, I get that call. So-and-so just graduated, he's coming to New York, or she's coming to Woody, you've got to talk to them. You got to talk to them. So you got to understand, this is coming after a lot of years being out here, 38 years. If I get 2 a year, that's, okay. And these young people who are coming along were not, in a sense, trained like we were. I mean, though we are university trained in the theater, when I came out, the university had no interest in me being in any kind of theater. I had to start all over again when I arrived in New York, working with Lloyd Richards, Win Handman, and the likes, and the Negro Ensemble Company, and all those companies. And so what we learned how to do what we are doing is from the library. I don't think any professor taught James Baldwin how to write these novels, Ralph Ellison how to write these novels, or Richard Wright. You go back to literature, you go back to world literature, and you come up with your own kind of through line, if you will. Young people are not doing that. They are coming out of the universities because they are coming out of these universities, they have all these unbelievable loans to pay off, and they are trying to get a job, and they are hurrying. So it takes them much longer to reach this self-identification, this self-knowledge, this surety of who they are. And it's all about identity. If they know who they are, then their art is going to resonate.
Hey, you talked about universal themes in theater, regardless of race. To what extent is the larger theater-going population ready and aware enough to accept some of the themes of African-American life and culture? The struggle against racism, like some white people think that racism doesn't exist anymore since we eliminated segregation.
Right.
To what extent is the white audience willing to accept that, or do they just want to see us sing and dance?
Well, I think the position of black people in the American theater and how white people relate to it is no different than black people in America and how white people relate to them in any other areas. I always tell this story about every year I go to England and I see maybe 15 plays in a week or two, and I cram it, you know. And I'm a member of several, you know, large white organizations, and I may come back and someone will talk about what they saw, and soon as I say what I saw, whether it's Shakespeare, the room gets quiet. They're not interested in that conversation. They're not interested in my opinion of white American art. So they're not they're not yet ready to accept me as, in a sense, on a parallel to what they are, even though England is their home. England is what they try to make America. You know what I mean? Whether it's the university system based on a European system, or they don't want to deal with the Africanness in anything.
Well, how have you been able to keep the New Federal Theater so vibrant and so alive for so long?
Well, you know, I think it's my love of what I do. You know,
that comes across very clearly.
You know, I think as long as I really love what I do and get excited about a new play, get excited about a young director who is just amazing, or a writer who says it in a way that's so arrogant and different than anything you've ever heard before, that excitement is going to make me say, I got to get this on at whatever odds. And once I say I got to get this on, I got to get people in to see it. So I would be on your show. I would be anywhere. I would be anywhere trying to get that audience to come to the New Federal Theater. And I think those people who are out there in that world, they know that we do not have the means of distributing the information to get people to come and see what we do. So a lot of people simply just call the theater and say, what are you doing next month? What are you doing? I'm going to calm down. Just, you know, because they feel comfortable, it's clean, it's nice, we don't challenge them.
What number should they call?
They should call New Federal Theater at 212-353-1176. 212-353-1176. They can always go to our website and get all the information they need about the New Federal Theater.
And what is your website?
Website is www.newfederaltheater.org. www.newfederaltheater.org.
See, Woody, I see you've managed to do the technology.
Oh, yeah.
At one time, none of us did that.
No, none of us did that, yeah.
This is the way of communicating. Now, one thing you do, you're very creative at a lot of things. You've done a video about segregating the greatest generation. Tell us about that.
About 7 years ago, Tom Brokaw did a book called The Greatest Generation. And Ossie Davis, the late Ossie Davis, great man, and I was just sitting talking about it, we was laughing about it. He says, oh, it's one black person in it, you know, one black person in it. I said, that's a shame, that's a shame. He said, oh, Brother King, you always call me Brother King. We got to do something about that. So I said, I'm going to make a film about how black people's lives changed and how World War II affected them. And he said, well, don't just do it on black people, because there were so many other people who had something to do with the way America is now, and they are the greatest generation. The musicians who went into World War II and actually played, well, it was Louis Armstrong and all the jazz artists who went all over Europe. Talk about the Japanese and who was in camps here in America, how they were treated. And try and talk about people who actually participated. And so I was able to get 16 or 17 people who are not only participants, but whose children's lives changed as a result of that. And that's going to be shown at the Diaspora Film Festival here in New York on November 27th at the Thalia Theater on 95th and Broadway, and again December 3rd at Teachers College.
Now, what do you expect to come out of this? I know when you produce a film, you say, well, this is a message I want to get across. What would satisfy you most about the reaction to this film?
Well, what I'm going to do and what I've been doing, I've been entered in about 10 black film festivals, and I get the black opinion for these film festivals. Then I introduce it in white film festivals, and then I will go to a television like PBS or a cable company, a large cable company like BET, and they will show it, and a much larger viewing public will see that we made unbelievable contributions and learned so much from those people who had participated in World War II. And I'll say this without any kind of embarrassment, one of the most poignant statements in the film you made.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was like amazing. It stays with me how right now in 2007, and whether we're in Iraq or wherever we are, you said, our problem is much bigger. Bombs cannot solve our problem now. We are dealing with global warming. We are dealing with health, education, welfare. These are things that you can't bomb. You know, you cannot go over to another country and solve that problem.
I'm frequently quoted as saying that World War II was a watershed in American history. We were founded in a constitution that recognized African Americans as only 3/5 of a person. We had to go through a civil war to liberate us from slavery. We had to go through the Civil Rights Revolution to get the Civil Rights Act and to eliminate some of the legal manifestations of segregation. But we still have the vestiges of racism in the American soul. And one of the things that theater helps to do, and you help to do, I believe, is to help explore that.
Yes.
Because you can't explore something that's deep in your culture
right.
unless you understand the emotions behind it.
You got to understand it. And the only way you're going to understand it is read, and put books in these young people's hands, suggest they exhaust everything in the library and what they're interested in, especially from small cities and counties.
I know that you do believe in reading plays,
yes.
and sometimes you have just reading sessions.
Yes, just reading
where people, I've attended some of them, where people come and read their plays,
right.
and you get a feeling of what they're trying to say. Now, how much of this do you do in the schools?
Well, what we have a situation where some call a school theater ticket program, where these students are invited to whatever we do. We have, we've been around a while, so we have maybe 15 or 20 teachers who look for what we are doing to bring their students to. So over the years, we've developed all these things, and we're really right here on the Lower East Side of New York, and we're surrounded by 3 schools right around the corner from us,
Well, if any of our audience are people who are teachers and in schools, they can call the New Federal Theater as well.
Yeah. And not only do we reach out to them, but most of the time, if they have tuition, they have admission, we have admission charge, we waive it, try and go and raise money from somewhere else so they can come in free.
Now, we've come toward the close of our discussion today. What do you think makes a great playwright?
A great playwright, in my opinion, has an unbelievable kind of assurance, self-identity, know who he is, she is, what she's about, a love of self, a love of family. It's a love of heritage, love of their people. I found that one playwrights sort of like have a sort of disdain for who they are, and they hate their blackness, and they look for ways in which to, very much like a lot of white Americans, blaming the victim for, so those plays never resonate for me. But a good playwright has this unbelievable love of self, unbelievable knowledge and love of family, whether it's aunts, uncles, brothers, and you can see it in August Wilson's work. I mean, you know, right away you see this guy, you know, Boy Willie. You know he loved that guy. You know, he loved that guy, Bernice, and piano lesson. He loved him. You know, Seth, or Joe Turner's Come and Gone, or Bynum, the Conjure Man. You know, it's like, you say, wow, he really loved these people. That's why there was not stereotypes. One of the problems with television, you know, is like in a half an hour you got to tell it all. So you got to come on with a stereotypical kind of role, and that's what we get. And we don't get a full view of who we're watching, you know?
Of course, you made a good point. Go to the library, get some of August Wilson's plays, get some of Baraka's plays, read Raisin in the Sun, and have a little family discussion, a little discussion group. Because black theater really is a mirror of black life.
Right, right.
And that's what you and the New Federal Theater try to do.
And we've been trying to do it since our inception. We want to, in a sense, integrate minorities, which is an old term now, and women into the mainstream of American theater.
The key word is diversity.
Diversity.
But the diversity doesn't take away from the fact that as African Americans, we have a deep heritage and history here that needs to be projected.
Right, right.
Today on African American Legends, we've been talking with Woodie King Jr., New Federal Theater, about the wonderful work that he and the New Federal Theater have been doing for so many years. I hope you check him out. Thanks, Woodie, for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.